Picture this. A man lies dying in a hospital bed, surrounded by millions of dollars in cash. He's achieved everything society told him would bring meaning: wealth, success, power. Yet his last words are, "I wasted it all." Now imagine another scene. A woman sits in a tiny apartment, no savings, no accolades, but she's surrounded by laughing friends. She whispers, "I lived fully." But the truth is, none of them found life's meaning. Same with you, and I will prove it in this video. You've been lied to about the meaning of life. Every self-help guru, every motivational speaker, every philosopher who's told you to find your purpose or follow your passion, they've all been selling you a story that's fundamentally broken. And here's the part that's going to make you uncomfortable. You already know this is true, but you've been too afraid to admit it. Think about the last time you felt truly alive. Not happy, not successful, alive. Was it when you achieved that goal, got that promotion? Or was it in a moment so ordinary you almost missed it? Maybe it was the smell of coffee on a Tuesday morning, or the way sunlight hit your kitchen table. But here's where it gets strange. Scientists at Harvard tracked 724 people for over 80 years in the longest study on human happiness ever conducted. They expected to find that meaning came from achievement, legacy, or spiritual awakening. Instead, they discovered something that shattered every assumption about human fulfillment. The people who reported the deepest sense of meaning weren't the richest, the most accomplished, or even the most religious. They were the ones who had mastered something so simple yet so radical that most of us actively avoid it. Before I tell you what they found, let me share something that happened to me 3 years ago. I was sitting in a cafe in Prague, supposedly living my dream as a successful writer traveling the world. Instagram perfect life, right? But I felt empty, hollow, like I was performing in a play about my own life. Then an elderly man at the next table leaned over and said something in broken English that changed everything. But his words weren't what you'd expect. He didn't tell me to find myself or follow my dreams. He said, "You are looking in the wrong direction." Then he pointed, not up at the sky or inward at my heart, but at something so obvious I'd never considered it. What he pointed at revealed the first piece of a puzzle I'm about to share with you. A puzzle that explains why everything you've been taught about meaning is backwards. You see, we've been programmed to believe that life's meaning is something we need to discover, like it's hidden treasure waiting to be found. This is the first lie. Meaning isn't discovered, it's something far more disturbing. To understand this, we need to talk about Viktor Frankl, the psychiatrist who survived Auschwitz and wrote Man's Search for Meaning. Everyone quotes his famous line about choosing your attitude in any circumstances. But they miss the darker truth he revealed. Frankl watched thousands die in the concentration camps. He noticed something that haunted him. It wasn't always the physically strongest who survived. Sometimes the weak outlived the strong. The difference? The survivors had done something with meaning that contradicts everything we believe. They didn't find it or create it. They did something else entirely, something that neuroscience is only now beginning to understand. Your brain contains roughly 86 billion neurons, firing in patterns more complex than all the stars in the galaxy. Every second it's creating your reality, your sense of self, your experience of meaning. But here's the mind-bending part. Studies using fMRI scans show that the part of your brain that activates when you experience deep meaning isn't where scientists expected. It's not in the rational prefrontal cortex or the emotional limbic system. It's in a place that suggests meaning operates on completely different rules than we thought. Let me paint you a picture that will make this clear. Imagine you're watching a movie of your entire life, from birth to death, played on fast forward. You see yourself chasing goals, building relationships, experiencing joy and pain. Now imagine you could pause this movie at the exact moment your life had the most meaning. Where would you stop? Most people think they'd pause at their wedding, the birth of their child, or some great achievement. But when researchers actually did this experiment, asking people to identify their most meaningful moments, the results were shocking. The majority didn't choose the big moments. They chose something else entirely. Something so counterintuitive that when I first learned about it, I didn't believe it. They chose moments of what researchers call meaning voids, experiences where traditional meaning had collapsed. But here's where it gets really weird. These meaning voids weren't empty. They were full of something else, something that ancient Buddhist monks called sunyata. and that cutting-edge physicists are now finding at the quantum level of reality. It's a principle that suggests the meaning of life isn't what we think. It's the opposite of what we think. To understand this, we need to dive into the story of a woman named Anna. Anna was a CEO of a Fortune 500 company. By every metric, she'd won at life. 7-figure salary, picture-perfect family, houses on 3 continents. But at 3 a.m. on a random Thursday, she found herself on her bathroom floor sobbing uncontrollably. Not from sadness, but from a revelation so profound it shattered her entire worldview. What she realized in that moment connects to what the old man in Prague pointed at, and what Frankel's survivors understood. She realized that she'd been living inside a story. Not just any story, but a specific narrative about what makes life meaningful. This story has a name: the achievement narrative. It says meaning comes from climbing ladders, reaching goals, building legacies. It's the dominant story of our culture. But Anna discovered something that night that neuroscientist Antonio Damasio confirmed in his groundbreaking research. This story is literally encoded in our neural pathways. We're not just told this story, we become it. But here's the twist that changes everything. The achievement narrative isn't wrong because it fails to deliver meaning. It's wrong because it delivers the wrong kind of meaning. There are actually 2 types of meaning, and we've been chasing the wrong one our entire lives. The first type is what psychologists call coherence meaning. Life makes sense, has purpose, follows a narrative. The second type is something far stranger. Researchers call it existential mattering, but that clinical term doesn't capture its earth-shattering implications. It's the feeling that you matter, not because of what you've done, but because of something more fundamental. And here's the kicker. These 2 types of meaning are often mutually exclusive. The more you chase coherence meaning through achievement, the less existential mattering you experience. It's like trying to hold water. The tighter you grip, the more it slips away. This brings us back to that Harvard study. The people with the deepest sense of life meaning had figured out how to flip the script. Instead of chasing coherence meaning, they discovered how to cultivate existential mattering. But the way they did it will challenge everything you believe about how to live a meaningful life. They didn't do more, they did less. Specifically, they stopped doing 5 things that everyone else believed were essential for meaning. The first thing they stopped doing is so counterintuitive that when I share it with audiences, I can literally see people's worldviews cracking. They stopped trying to be special. In a culture that screams, "You're unique, you're important, you matter because you're different," they embraced being ordinary. But not in the way you think. They discovered what Zen masters have known for centuries. The extraordinary hides in the ordinary. But it only reveals itself when you stop looking for it. This connects to a phenomenon physicists call the observer effect. The act of observing something changes its nature. The same is true for meaning. The moment you chase it, it transforms into something else, something hollow. Let me tell you about James, a janitor at MIT. For 30 years, he cleaned the same hallways where Nobel laureates walked. Society would say his life lacked meaning, no great achievements, no legacy, no impact. But James understood something those Nobel laureates often missed. Every night, as he mopped those floors, he practiced what I call meaning alchemy. He transformed the mundane into the sacred through a mental shift so subtle most people miss it entirely. Instead of thinking, "I'm just cleaning floors," James thought something different. His exact thought process reveals the second thing people with deep meaning stop doing. They stop separating their life into meaningful and meaningless parts. James saw his work as part of an interconnected web where every action, no matter how small, rippled outward in ways he couldn't imagine. That floor he cleaned might be where a student had their eureka moment. That trash he emptied might have contained the failed experiments that led to breakthrough discoveries. This isn't positive thinking or self-delusion. It's based on a mathematical principle called sensitive dependence on initial conditions, better known as the butterfly effect. Every action, no matter how trivial, affects the entire system. James understood his life had meaning, not because he did important things, but because importance itself is an illusion. Everything matters, or nothing does. There's no middle ground. But understanding this intellectually isn't enough. You need to feel it in your bones. That's where the third thing comes in. People with deep meaning stopped trying to feel meaningful. Instead, they cultivated what I call meaning sensitivity, the ability to detect meaning that's already there. It's like developing perfect pitch for the music of existence, and just like musical training, it requires practice. Here's a practice that will rewire your brain for meaning sensitivity. For the next 7 days at exactly 3:47 p.m., stop whatever you're doing and notice 5 things. The temperature of the air on your skin, the quality of light in the room, the subtle sounds you usually ignore, the feeling of your breath, and, this is crucial, the space between your thoughts. That last one is where meaning lives, not in the thoughts themselves, but in the gaps between them. This connects to something neuroscientists discovered when they studied the brains of people during moments of profound meaning. Their brain activity didn't increase, it decreased. Specifically, activity in the default mode network, the part of the brain responsible for self-referential thinking, went quiet. Meaning, it turns out, isn't about adding something to your life. It's about subtracting the noise that drowns it out. Which brings us to the 4th thing people with deep meaning stop doing. They stop trying to leave a legacy. This one's hard to swallow in a culture obsessed with impact and influence. But consider this. In 200 years, 99.99% of us will be completely forgotten. Your great-great-grandchildren won't know your name. Your achievements will be dust. Your legacy will be a footnote to a footnote. Depressing? Only if you're playing the wrong game. The people in that Harvard study had discovered a different game entirely. Instead of trying to be remembered, they focused on something far more radical: being present. Not in the meditation app, mindfulness way, but present in a way that acknowledges a disturbing truth about time and meaning. The past doesn't exist except as electrical patterns in your brain. The future is pure imagination. The only meaning that's real is the meaning happening right now, and right now is always disappearing. This leads to a paradox that broke my brain when I first encountered it. If meaning only exists in the present, and the present is always vanishing, then meaning is always dying. But here's the beautiful twist. It's also always being born. Every moment is both a death and a birth of meaning. The people who reported the deepest life satisfaction had learned to surf this wave of constant creation and destruction. They'd become comfortable with impermanence. The 5th and final thing they stopped doing is perhaps the most radical. They stopped trying to understand the meaning of life. Instead, they realized something that flips the entire question on its head. Life doesn't have meaning. Life is meaning. Trying to find the meaning of life is like a wave trying to find the ocean. You're not separate from meaning, searching for it. You're made of it. This connects back to what that old man in Prague pointed at. He didn't point at the sky or my heart. He pointed at the coffee cup between us. Steam rising, ceramic warm against skin, bitter taste on tongue. He was showing me that meaning isn't abstract, it's physical, immediate, sensory. It's not found in grand philosophies, but in the texture of direct experience. But here's where most people get it wrong. They think this means live in the moment or appreciate the little things. That's not it at all. It's something far more radical. It's recognizing that every moment contains infinite depth if you know how to look. Let me show you what I mean. Right now, as you're listening to these words, billions of things are happening. Your heart is beating, pumping blood through 60,000 miles of blood vessels. Trillions of bacteria in your gut are affecting your mood and thoughts. Photons that traveled 93 million miles from the sun are hitting your skin. You're on a rock, spinning at 1,000 miles per hour, orbiting a nuclear furnace at 67,000 miles per hour, in a galaxy moving at 1.3 million miles per hour through space, and yet you feel still. This isn't just poetic language, it's literal reality. Every moment you exist is a fucking miracle that defies comprehension. But we've become numb to it. We've traded wonder for productivity, awe for achievement, mystery for mastery. The meaning of life isn't hidden. It's so obvious we can't see it. It's like those magic eye pictures from the 90s. You have to unfocus to see the hidden image. We've been focusing so hard on finding meaning that we've missed the fact that we're swimming in it. But recognizing this requires a complete reversal of how we normally think. Remember Anna, the CEO on her bathroom floor? Her revelation was exactly this reversal. She realized she'd been living life like it was a problem to be solved rather than a mystery to be experienced. That night, she made a decision that her board of directors called insane. She stepped down from her position, sold most of her possessions, and did something that connects to an ancient practice modern science is just beginning to understand. She became what I call a meaning detective, not searching for meaning, but investigating how meaning manifests in everyday life. She spent a year working minimum wage jobs, cashier, house cleaner, food delivery, not as some privileged poverty tourism, but as research into a hypothesis that changed her life. Meaning is equally distributed across all experiences, but unequally perceived. What she discovered aligns perfectly with that Harvard study. The cashiers who found deep meaning in their work weren't deluding themselves. They developed meaning sensitivity. They saw their role not as scanning items, but as being the brief human connection in someone's day. They noticed the tired mom buying dinner after a long shift, the elderly man whose only social interaction was chatting at checkout, the teenager nervously buying condoms. They were witnesses to the human comedy, participants in the grand drama of existence. But here's the part that will mess with your head. Anna discovered that meaning isn't just equally distributed, it's infinitely available. There's no scarcity of meaning. You can't use it up. The more you perceive, the more there is to perceive. It's like consciousness itself, the one resource that multiplies when shared. This abundance of meaning is what mystics throughout history have tried to point to, what poets attempt to capture, what music somehow conveys without words. So if meaning is infinite and everywhere, why do we feel so empty? Why does life often feel meaningless? The answer connects to something called meaning blindness, a perceptual disorder affecting 90% of the population. We've trained ourselves to see only certain types of meaning, like how a musician might hear only melody and miss the rhythm. But this blindness isn't permanent, it can be cured. The cure involves 3 stages, each more challenging than the last. The first stage is recognition, seeing that you've been looking for meaning in the wrong places, like looking for your glasses while wearing them. The second stage is reversal, flipping your understanding of meaning from something you find to something you are. The third stage is the hardest. It's what I call reality. Reality means accepting a truth so profound it sounds like nonsense. The meaning of life is that life has meaning. Not a specific meaning, not a grand purpose, but meaning itself as the fundamental nature of existence. This isn't a tautology or wordplay. It's pointing to something that can't be said directly, only hinted at. Like how you can't describe the taste of chocolate, you have to experience it. Wait, remember the 2 people from the beginning? The rich man who died feeling he'd wasted his life, and the poor woman who died feeling fulfilled? Here's the twist. They're the same person, the same Anna. The CEO version of her was heading toward that first death. The meaning detective version discovered the second path. But here's what's really going to bake your noodle. Both versions were living meaningful lives. The difference wasn't in what they did, but in what they perceived. The CEO Anna was meaning blind, chasing shadows on the cave wall. The detective Anna had developed meaning sensitivity, seeing the fire that cast the shadows. Same life, different perception, completely different experience. This leads to a practical question. How do you develop meaning sensitivity? How do you cure meaning blindness? I'm going to share 3 techniques that sound simple, but are secretly profound. They're based on neuroscience, ancient wisdom, and the experiences of those Harvard study participants. But warning, these aren't tips or hacks. They're more like installing a new operating system for consciousness. The first technique is called meaning mapping. For 1 week, carry a small notebook. Every time you feel a spark of meaning, however tiny, write down 3 things: what you were doing, what you were thinking, and what you were sensing. Don't judge or analyze, just record. At the end of the week, look for patterns. You'll discover your unique meaning signature, the specific conditions that open you to meaning. Everyone's is different, but there are surprising commonalities. Most people discover their meaning signatures cluster around 3 types of experiences: connection with people, nature, or ideas; creation, making something, solving problems, expressing yourself; and transcendence, moments where the ego disappears. But here's the counterintuitive part. The activities that trigger these experiences are often mundane. Washing dishes can be transcendent. Small talk can be profound connection. Organizing a drawer can be creation. The second technique builds on the first. It's called meaning fasting. Just as fasting from food can reset your digestive system, fasting from certain meaning killers can reset your meaning sensitivity. For one day each week, abstain from 5 things: social media, news, comparing yourself to others, rushing, and this is the hardest, trying to be productive. These 5 activities flood your system with fake meaning, like junk food crowds out nutrition. On your meaning fast days, you'll initially feel anxious, bored, useless. That's withdrawal from fake meaning. Push through. Around hour 6, something shifts. Colors become brighter. Sounds become richer. The present moment becomes almost unbearably vivid. You're experiencing reality without the filters that usually dull it. This is your natural state, one of inherent meaning that gets obscured by the noise of modern life. The third technique is the most powerful. It's called meaning conversations. Once a week, have a conversation with someone where you follow 3 rules. No small talk, no advice giving, and no performing. Instead, ask questions like, what's making you feel alive lately? When do you feel most yourself? What's something you've been thinking about but haven't told anyone? Then, and this is crucial, listen like your life depends on it. These conversations do something remarkable. They create what physicists call quantum entanglement, but with consciousness. 2 people, honestly sharing their experience of being alive, generate a field of meaning between them. It's not your meaning or their meaning. It's something new, born from the connection. This is what Martin Buber called the I-thou relationship, where meaning isn't in the individuals, but in the space between them. But here's where I need to issue a warning. As you develop meaning sensitivity, you'll discover something unsettling. Life contains not just infinite meaning, but infinite suffering. The same sensitivity that opens you to beauty opens you to pain. This is why many people unconsciously choose meaning blindness. It's a defense mechanism against the full intensity of existence. But here's what those Harvard participants understood. Meaning includes suffering, not despite it, but through it. This connects to something called post-traumatic growth, the phenomenon where people report their lives have more meaning after terrible experiences. It's not that suffering creates meaning. It's that suffering strips away the superficial, leaving only what's essential. Like how forest fires clear undergrowth, allowing new life to emerge. The people with the deepest meaning hadn't avoided suffering. They'd learned to compost it into wisdom. This brings us to a crossroads. You now understand that the meaning of life isn't something you find, it's something you are. You know that meaning is infinite and everywhere, waiting to be perceived. You have practical techniques to develop meaning sensitivity. But knowledge isn't transformation. To actually live this truth requires something more. It requires what I call meaning courage. Meaning courage is the willingness to release your old story about life's purpose, even though that story feels like your identity. It's choosing to see ordinary life as sacred, even though culture says you're settling. It's trusting that you matter, not because of your achievements, but because consciousness itself matters, and you're an expression of it. This isn't easy, it's fucking terrifying. But here's the beautiful paradox. The moment you stop chasing meaning and start embodying it, life transforms. Not because anything external changes, but because your perception shifts. Colors become more vivid, not metaphorically, but literally. Studies show meaning state consciousness increases visual acuity. Time slows down because you're no longer rushing towards some future where meaning supposedly lives. Relationships deepen because you're present instead of performing. This is what happened to James the janitor, to Detective Anna, to those Harvard study participants. They discovered the ultimate plot twist. The meaning of life isn't what you think. It's what you are when you stop thinking you need to be something else. They learned to see the extraordinary in the ordinary, the sacred in the mundane, the infinite in the finite. They realized that asking, "What's the meaning of life?" is like asking, "What's the meaning of meaning?" The question dissolves into the answer. So here's my challenge to you, my creative, specific call to action. For the next 24 hours, conduct an experiment. Live as if everything I've shared is true. Act as if you're made of meaning, swimming in meaning, breathing meaning. Don't try to find it or create it, just notice it. In your morning shower, feel the miracle of hot water, the engineering marvel of plumbing, the biological wonder of your body. In conversations, listen for the meaning between the words. In work, see your tasks as part of an infinite web of connection. But here's the crucial part. When your mind says this is stupid, this is just positive thinking, this doesn't matter, recognize that voice. That's meaning blindness, trying to reassert itself. It's the old operating system fighting the update. Thank it for trying to protect you, then gently return to perceiving meaning. Not thinking about it, perceiving it. There's a universe of difference. As you do this experiment, something strange will happen. You'll realize you've been homesick your entire life for a home you never left. You've been searching for something you never lost. You've been trying to become something you already are. The cosmic joke is that the meaning of life is both the simplest and most complex thing. You're already living it. The only question is whether you're awake to it.